All right, let's get it going. Hi, everyone. I am Ari Engel, the Director of Creative Community for Peace. Thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who don't know, Creative Community for Peace is a nonprofit entertainment industry organization comprised of many prominent members of the entertainment community who have come together to promote the arts as a bridge to peace. Additionally, we are a leading organization working to counter anti-Semitism within the entertainment industry and also galvanizing support against the cultural boycott of Israel. We have a fantastic panel discussion today on the state of the music industry in the time of COVID-19. For all of those joining us on Zoom, you can leave a question in the Q&A section, and we will get to some of them in the later part of our discussion. To briefly introduce our panelists, first we have Antonia Armato, who is a member of the production team Rock Mafia, who has written and produced songs with artists such as Eminem, Justin Bieber, Miley Cyrus, Ellie Goulding, Demi Lovato, Selena Gomez, and many more, who have sold over 50 million records. Joshua Binder is on our advisory board and is a founding partner of Rothenberg, Mohr, and Binder. His clients include artists such as Daddy Yankee, Marshmello, and Top Dog Entertainment, which is home to artists such as Kendrick Lamar. Markell Casey, who is the senior director at Pulse Music Group, who works with and has signed artists such as James Blake to the publishing company. He has also signed with and worked with artists such as Churches. Ken Fermaglich, who is also on our advisory board and is a partner of UTA in New York. His clients include legendary artists such as Guns N' Roses, Muse, and Paramore. Daniel Glass, also a member of our advisory board and the founder and president of Glassnote Entertainment Group, who has signed and worked with bands such as Mumford & Sons, Childish Gambino, Phoenix, Erykah Badu, and many, many others. Finally, we are fortunate to have a great moderator today in Malina Saval, who is features editor at Variety, where she covers film, TV, music, and theater. She's won 2 LA Press Club awards and is a board member of the LA Press Club. And I'll hand it over to you, Malina.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good.
Good. Yeah, this is like a crazy platform. So my first question is for Danielle, Markell, and Antonia. I feel like this time has really kind of brought out the creativity in a lot of people. We're indoors, we can't go anywhere. You know, people are being really creative. And I was wondering if you know, for music makers and songwriters, if anybody had any anecdotes about your own clients in music that they've been creating while they're on lockdown, and if you could share any of those anecdotes.
So
little dog eaters.
I don't mind going first and answering that. I mean, I have a pretty broad roster of clients, and the majority of them are very much self-contained. So the idea of being in quarantine to them doesn't really change much. So they've been quite enjoying it. However, there's the small minority of some of my clients who collaborate. I think the first week and a half was very, very difficult for them because all of a sudden you're now cut off from your creative partners. And I had a few nervous phone calls with a couple of them, and it was just like really quite imperative for me to tell them just to pause and not do anything, take stock. And also just realize, like, don't be too hard on yourself because we are in the middle of a global pandemic. So it's okay to not do anything. But I'm sure, as you know, with creatives, a week and a half later, they start getting really itchy. And, you know, I think as human beings, we're very adaptive. So now I'm starting to get some really, really interesting songs. Thankfully, the lyrics about quarantine are being kept to a minimum, which is quite good.
Yeah.
But it's been good for a lot of my clients now because they're now finding new ways to work, and I think we're trying to take the positives from that.
How about you, Daniel?
It's been a really interesting time. We've had, we lost a dear friend last week, which was tragic. On the personal side, and some of my best friends had the virus and now are recovering. So that has been very tough to deal with. And on the artistic side, for the purposes really of this call, we were having some pretty amazing stuff happen. We woke up one morning and we heard about this show on Netflix that I forgot we licensed one of our songs to, called Elite. And Variety actually just wrote an article about it. And this song by Churches called Forever has taken off and become this massive hit with the digital providers and radio. And it wouldn't have happened if people weren't at home telling each other about this show, which is basically like a Spanish version of Gossip Girl. And the song now is going to be a very, very big hit as a result of the isolation and quarantine. Then they made a video, Churches, which is called Separate Together, which I think they spent $300 making. I think possibly the best video they've ever made, and caught the eye of the people at Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy Fallon booker called. They're booked for next Friday to play Fallon. Zane Lowe got a hold of it. He's got Lauren Mayberry from Churches coming on the air with special friends, doing a home show. None of this would have happened if this wasn't this period of pandemic and isolation. Aurora wrote a song in isolation with her boyfriend, unlike her other material. She'd just come out of the Oscars with Frozen, and now she wrote this song about it. I don't want to give the title away, let her give it away, but really it's a love song with an arrangement that she's never done anything like this before, and totally came out of it. The only thing that's different is the string section was done remotely in England by Isabel Waller-Bridges, who's pretty famous. And but we have more and more stories about this. James Hersey is an artist that we represent, and Josh Binder actually is attorney. He's never been as active as he is on social. He's got a whole new identity. He dyed his hair green, and now he's like gone wild. But I can give you story after story, looking at Marcus Mumford, how inspirational his music has been. But it's been, I've never been in touch with artists as much as I have in our 13 years, intimately checking in on people, seeing how their mental health is. So it's been a very creative time, depressing as far as touring.
Right.
Very, very, very tough.
Right.
For new. We'll talk about that later. We'll talk about that later. But anyway, so it's been a lot of positives.
Okay, great. Antonina, I was wondering about you. Have you noticed this peak in creativity amongst your songwriters?
Well, we have this big sort of campus in Santa Monica. We have 4 or 5 studios and all these common areas, and all of the artists that we have on our label. We were just launching a new label called Heroin with an E, and we had all these great artists that would just come in and we bounce off each other, kind of like Asylum Records was sort of our template of just sort of a canvas and a campus where people could paint and write and be together and do all this stuff. So obviously that doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
And it's been interesting because we have a studio in our house, and we've been writing not just with Zoom, but in different ways where we would send tracks to different writers. We'd get on a video chat. We'd talk about concepts. We'd kind of write virtually. But interestingly enough, like BTS, their people reached out to me a month or 2 before the pandemic.
Wow.
And I never do this anymore, but they just said, oh, we have a bunch of tracks, write to them. And it turned out that I got like 4 songs on the BTS record, and, you know, including their new single, which I think is called On, obviously. But I thought, wow, this is great. So now they're just sending me, like for the first time in years, people are sending me tracks. Okay. So I can kind of consume and create music in a different way. We have an EP coming out right now on 12-tone. Our first single drops tonight, and we had to finish that amidst the calamity of what's going on and the literal shutdown. So that's been pretty tricky, but we've all been doing Zoom conversations like this, like with the PR, and the, Steve Bartles has kind of brought everybody together and is trying to do like a little community of creativity so we don't lose a beat, but the beat of your heart is different, and the landscape is different, and it's harder you have to find a way to grow a garden in this new landscape.
Have you noticed, Antonina, not to generalize, but for a lot of artists, they do some of their best work in the middle of the night and they sleep all day. And now we're kind of in a period of timelessness. You don't have to really conform to hours. Has that, do you think, helped some of your songwriters and your artists?
Well, I think it's a little discombobulating at first.
Yeah.
Because, it's funny, artists hate anything that restricts them.
Right.
And this is completely the opposite. If there's it's a whole new world. So, sometimes artists are calling me up going I don't know what to do with myself. I was supposed to shoot this video. you know, to Daniel's point, obviously his artist churches made the video on their own with their, because no labels are sanctioning any groups of people getting together. Like there's no label saying, oh yeah, get in the studio and finish this, because they're, you know, they're trying to do the protocol that's within the jurisdiction of what we're supposed to do. Not be in a room with people, not do anything. I think we like to bounce off each other and create together, and the energy. So I think a lot of people, like Daniel said, you know, your mental health gets a little crazy because you're used to bouncing off of each other and being created by each other's energy. And so I think it's been a little bit of a new world for sure.
Yeah. This is a message. We'll start with Ken. There have been songs about COVID-19 the past few weeks. There's been a few on the Latin America charts. They're called a couple called Coronavirus. I don't know if you've heard them, but I was wondering what you think about these songs that are about the sort of plague that we are experiencing, and if you think that these really have any mileage outside of this period that we're experiencing right now, or are they just kind of gimmicky?
Haven't heard one of them, couldn't comment.
Okay. They're doing really well on the Spotify charts. Has anyone heard any of these songs?
I saw the title and it just bugged me. So
Okay.
I purposely didn't listen, but you know, I'm just being honest. I'm sure it's great.
No, I mean, I would think that would be one's, like, you know, reaction as well. This is for
there's one called Coronavirus, which has Cardi B's vocal on it, and I look after Cardi, so I do know this record, and I think there's a viral element to that song that's had kind of a life of its own. It's not on purpose.
Do you think that it'll extend beyond this, what we're going through right now? I mean, is this going to have any legs post coronavirus era?
I mean, I don't know how long. I don't know when this ends, but you know, I don't think anyone has a strategy of trying to make records with that term or any terms associated with it. I think artists, you know, want to avoid doing anything that's considered in bad taste or you know, offensive, and I think everyone is very sensitive in this time because, you know, the touring business has crashed to a greater extent, but the rest of the business is remarkably healthy. There's a lot of activity both on the record side and the publishing side, and I'm even seeing a lot of you know, companies trying to create activations, corporations hitting up some of my bigger clients saying, you know, let's do something with Postmates, let's do something with this fast food restaurant, and there's a tremendous amount of activity. But we, as you know, in the music community, aren't getting, or some of us aren't getting hit like the rest of society, who are really having a much rougher experience with losing jobs and getting sick and real issues that that we don't see on a day-to-day basis, which is why our artists, you know, they're still going to create, they're still going to make music, they're going to find their way. That it's, you know, I've been saying in the last couple of days, music is like a weed, it's going to find its way to survive, and the lack of touring is going to be offset with different ways of creating, and we will continue to see that.
That's a nice segue into my next question. I'm thinking of particular genres like punk and hard rock, genres that really do make the bulk of their revenue from touring. Are there particular genres that you really think will be hurt the most by their inability to tour?
All of them. Every one of them. There's no genre that's not affected by it. The touring world is in a complete standstill. So every genre is affected.
Yeah, one of our artists, Elohim, was on tour midway, just getting thick into it when this whole thing put the kibosh on it. It was like, wow. Like everyone thought, oh, we got one more week. We get one more week. No, we don't.
Yeah. And just how did you handle that with the client? I mean, there's obviously devastation that just hits them like a truck.
Yeah,
How did
I'll
you
just say that the conversations with the clients and the managers of clients are very, very difficult, and they're very emotional at times, and they're, you know, this is people's livelihoods we're talking about, their careers we're talking about on the road, and to your point, a lot of different artists make money largely on the road, and so the kinds of conversations are initially difficult, and then they turn to confusing because there's no clarity here. There's no roadmap here. There's no definitive answer that I can give to managers or clients or bands or artists when they can tour again. We have some ideas, and there's, I'm sure we'll talk about some of that, but ultimately it's a very confusing time, and therefore it's those kinds of conversations are difficult. The only bright side is the silver lining on the at least from an agency perspective at a company like ours. We're now pivoting and doing some things with artists. To Josh's point, we're trying to find other ways for artists to make revenue because the touring side of it is no longer there.
Yeah.
And do you think that the virtual, do you think any of those virtual things that they're doing online, like concerts, like John Legend was putting that show together, is that going to be, do you think people are going to gravitate towards that, or do they have to be there live?
Yeah, that's a great question. My sense is at this point, first of all, we're already starting to see the consumer and the fan be starved and want something. The initial stuff that's happening is largely charitable, as you're noting, especially with the Global Citizen event that's happening, I think, on Saturday on several different networks.
Mm-hmm.
But those performances are all somewhat regulated because the performances have to be, dealing with social distancing restrictions and whatnot. So they're very limited and primitive in what the performances can be for the most part. I think as social distancing, as it relates to people and bands getting together in rooms even spaced out, relax a little bit, you're going to start to see more and more of what you're asking about, which is more and more shows, but more and more shows that I think will have the ability to have better production and to have a better look to them, and potentially as we move away from the horror of the deaths and all the things that are happening with the virus itself, there will be this kind of capitalistic piece to this where there will be paywalls and there'll be ways for pay-per-views and different artists to actually be paid for those kinds of shows. But it's not now as much. I think that's still several weeks down the road. We still have to get away from, the harshness of the reality of what the virus is doing and what it has done.
Yeah, there is, Ken, a Polestar recently published a study saying that the concert industry could lose $9 billion.
Yep, I saw it. Yep.
So when things start to go back to new, like not normal, because I don't think it will be anything that we've sort of seen before, but what changes do you think will be implemented long term?
I think, look, I can't prognosticate exactly, but I can give you a sense of what I think from just the changes. The changes are going to potentially affect reduced capacities. First and foremost, I think that's something we're going to see if concerts can go back on at some point, whenever that may be. Reduced capacities are part of what we're going to have to live with, as well as testing of some kind, whether it's temperatures or maybe even a rapid test coming into the venue, certainly masks and whatnot in the short term, over the next, however, when it starts, you'll see masks in venues and whatnot. And I think you're going to see a whole, the trick on all of it is going to be, can we get the consumer to feel safe to want to go to a show and go into a mass gathering, even if it's 250 people. And that's going to be a process, and it's going to require, just like the airlines are going through, it's going to require a tremendous amount of education from the promoters to the consumer to show them that their venue is clean and show them, the consumer, the fan, what it is that's happening in the venue to keep them safe in a gathering setting.
Does anybody, I mean, you included, have any handle on whether or not this means like a major spike in possibly ticket prices in the future to accommodate for all of these other measures that need to be implemented?
I don't see a spike in ticket prices. Ticket prices were at highs as we kind of shut this all down. I actually think ticket prices have to relax a little bit due to the economy and the unemployment numbers, which are sitting at, I think now 22 million people in this country are unemployed as of today. That doesn't really bode well for spiking ticket prices. It bodes better for lowering ticket prices to make tickets more so affordable in the short term. And I'm really speaking, over the next, whenever we start up, whenever that is, which I have no idea, but that we'll have to be really mindful of that for the first year, and maybe within a year to 2 years after this business starts to come back online, we'll be able to get back to where we were from a churn perspective as well as ticket price perspective, but certainly unknown because you just don't know what's going to happen with vaccines and other things that have to affect all of this.
Right. Josh.
No, but Malina, I think Ken is, we're beating around the bush and Ken's bringing up some good points. People have to feel safe. Right. Safe to do, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a theater, an arena, a stadium, a festival. You put yourself in the hands of an EDM business, a DJ business. I started my career as a DJ, and I would not be able to work right now if I did not produce records also as a Diplo or a Marshmello does. But I think that, and those are the minority of DJs or electronic artists that do it. But we've got to vote. The whole thing here is you have to have confidence in the leadership of your country or your state or your city or your town. And if you have confidence that they're working on keeping you safe, keeping you employed, making sure you're subsidized or enhanced or whatever you need, that to me is the biggest thing that the public and the fans and the industry can do. I'm not telling people who to vote for. I just think that we have that power. The voting booth is coming up in a matter of weeks.
Yep.
And if people like the way things have been handled and have confidence that there will be testing, it's about the numbers, it's about the testing, it's about what the testing proves and how it's controlled. And number two, a vaccine. And then I think people will go out in droves and it'll be happy days are here again, bigger than ever. But I personally do not have confidence in most of the leadership in our country that they're working towards that. Getting back to business, you can say it all you want. We want to get back. It means nothing. You're going to see a spike in disease, a spike in contagion as soon as people go back prematurely. So I want to be at those festivals. I want to be at those concerts because we can't sustain we can't break new artists without having them either do promotion tours or concert tours, whether they're the lower artists, the middle, or even the big artists. So that to me is a very important part of this, is that people have to vote. And we've got to see a change, that we have confidence that there are true scientists working on things and people with brains that are working with the economies. That is what I care about.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And since you brought it up, I mean, I think this is another example of where state government is really important. This could come down to, I mean, different states deciding who gets to play, how they get to play.
It's going to come down to that because different states are going to have different levels of what's happened with the virus, which will then dictate when economies can open back up and people feel more comfortable. And certainly, it's going to be very difficult to just have it be across the board. I don't see that. It's certain places are going to come online sooner rather than later, and other places could be severely delayed.
And my brother, who's a doctor, who's on the front line, he's working with a bunch of other doctors. They're working diligently on getting an antibody test. So not only to test whether you have it, but whether you have antibodies, because once you'll be sort of like a superhero. If you know you can't get it,
right?
Then you can sort of, there could be a way that they're even talking about having some kind of like card or some kind of, like if you go to the airport, I have been tested, I have the antibodies, I'm free to do this. I will never be, a person that's gonna transfer the disease to anyone. Also, to your point about people feeling safe in the concerts and stuff, this is mostly probably ignorance, but so many young people I've talked to cannot wait.
Yeah.
They think they're immortal.
Yeah. They think they're immune. I was going to make that point with respect to demographic as far as age.
Right.
And I do agree the younger demographic does believe that they, don't take the kind of precaution and throw caution to the wind, really. And you may see artists, an audience that's younger, be more willing in the earlier part of how we come out of this to mass gather than an older demographic. Yeah, I think there's a real dichotomy there.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
just wanted also to add to that something that I started doing in the last couple of days with my incredible healthcare provider is getting some of these antibody tests, because like I mentioned, some of my clients would like to get together and start working. So having taken the tests, seeing whether or not you've had the virus or you have the antibodies, you can go into a situation knowing full well that you both
Right.
have a level of protection. So I think starting early would be good because it allows the economy to open up and, you know, crucially allows people to start getting back to work. So, I mean, I'd love to see that happening. But to Daniel's point, I think for you to really see this going back to some level of normality, it has to be on a federal and state level where people, I'm very lucky and fortunate that I'm privileged enough to be able to get some of these tests, but I'm in a very, very, very small minority, and I think everyone else should have access to this.
Yeah, and also, I mean, right now there's a margin of error in these antibody tests up to like 25%. So they're not perfected, but hopefully they will be.
Right.
True.
We're working toward that.
Yeah,
Josh, as a lawyer, I'm just curious, you know, how busy are you? How busy are lawyers these days? Are deals still being made?
We are busier than ever.
Wow.
We have 9 lawyers on both coasts, and you know, nobody's driving, nobody's going to shows, nobody's going to lunches and dinners, and I kind of feel like we're working longer and harder, and really delivering for clients, because there needs to be a way to offset the lack of income that's happening in the touring business, and there's lots of deals to be made. There's, you know, companies, if you represent labels and represent you know, managers and whatnot that are signing acts, that's happening. Major record companies are signing deals across the business, all of them. You know, the publishers are very active and very aggressive because you know, there will be certain dips in income, whether it's ASCAP or BMI, although I don't think that they're in the same place, and I think the way that the performance societies operate, it will take a hit in different ways, because you have restaurants that are going out of business and clubs, and you don't have the performance income that's coming in from
Right.
some of those areas. But streaming numbers are up. I mean, I spoke to Mike Karen this morning, and he also confirmed that. I think subscriptions are still strong, and they're not going to change. I think you know, streaming is the big winner. If there is a winner here, you know, streaming is stronger than ever, both on the paid platforms and on you know, the Instagrams and the Facebooks and all these things. I mean, I have Marshmello, and he's done 2 concerts on back-to-back Saturdays. Cardi interviewed Bernie Sanders, and you know, I think on one of her Insta lives, she got over 1 million people. You know, people are creating, and people are going to release albums, and they're gonna release content, and they're gonna make songs.
Not even going to. There's actual music that's being released daily by
Right.
large artists while all of this is happening.
Yeah.
Right. Every week there's a new Music Friday, and there's a list of new songs that are constantly coming out. I have an artist, Jack Galinsky, on Island, releasing a video today and tomorrow. You know, there's going to be music, so there's lots of work for us to do, and we're trying to do it.
Now, streaming was down last month in March, and then it went up.
So it all depends on what you're comparing, right? If you look at 2019 to 2020, you have an increase in streaming and number of subscriptions.
Okay.
If you look at the number of streams that is happening in a given moment, there might be a decrease, but the number of streams doesn't decrease the pot of money.
Okay.
right? The pot of money, I mean, it's a per stream calculation. So whatever the number of, every stream is technically created equal. And if there's 1 million streams less in the given period of time, it doesn't mean that there's going to be less money in that period of calculation. So people got to pay attention to exactly what's being said and how it affects the economics of what happens. But today, more important than ever, which is maybe why we're super busy, the deals that you make are really important, right? Because if you don't have income from, a lot of times record companies will say, well, you're going to do this deal and we're not going to participate in your live, or we're not going to participate in your publishing, or we're not going to participate, and you have to take a hit somewhere. That argument isn't as strong as it was when there was income. So, artists and the managers and the lawyers and all of us, our jobs become a little bit more key to what enters into the team's pocket.
Antonina, I think you had something you wanted to add?
No, well, I was just saying that, yeah, deals are still being made. I mean, and especially with different platforms. Like, I thought everything was going to shut down, but I've been continuing. I created this musical movie for a big platform, and I thought everything would shut down, but actually it's accelerated. Like, they just want to make sure that they can hit the ground running, and they want to close this deal as soon as possible, which is great. We are working with some really amazing mixers that have their own facilities, so that, we're finishing the Yoshi Flower record for Interscope. We're finishing the Elohim's new record. We're able to do things sort of out of the box. And then to what you were saying before about publishers like ASCAP and BMI, my partner, Tim James, reached out to ASCAP because some of our writers, and Markell, I don't know if this happened with you, but they were talking that they were going to postpone the payment. And everyone was like, no, that's what that's our bread and butter. Please don't. And then after inquiry, we realized that it's just going to be a few week delay. Did you find that out as well?
Yeah, there was a bit of a hoo-ha around it, but I don't think this is something that will be a long-term issue. I do think it'll be solved very, very
No,
quickly.
it can be sorted out, but it's like you just want to have certain things reassuring. You that we're here for each other. Like with Community of Peace, it's like, do you have each other's back? Is there a way that we can help each other through this? Like, what can I do to facilitate someone's, comfort level on it? What can I give? I almost felt, I don't want to get all emotional, but I almost felt like, survivor's guilt.
Right.
Because I was still able to write these songs, finish these albums. There's income streams coming in.
Yeah.
I have no real change other than I'm sort of locked in with someone I love, doing something I love. So, and cooking a lot. I'm cooking a lot.
Yeah.
But that, I don't keep 6 feet, distance away from my refrigerator lately.
Right. Nobody does.
It's kind of like my best friend. But I felt bad, and I'm thinking, what can we all do?
Right.
Help each other, the people that are having a hard time sustaining a sense of hope.
Well, I was going to ask, do you think, what can radio, for example, be doing to, to connect and inform local audiences? Like, what are they doing that's good?
One thing I've noticed that's clearly happened, given the new circumstances, radio seems to be doing live Instagrams with artists, especially artists who are actively promoting music right now. And those Instagrams seem to, even if it's just an interview, not necessarily a performance, but could be that too, those seem to now have replaced phoners, because artists are willing to hop on Instagram live with a DJ and have it watched by other people, not just in the geo-fenced area of where the terrestrial radio station is broadcasting. So clearly, their radio is adapting to a new medium with Instagram very quickly, and putting artists on their Instagram and having a back and forth that way to talk to artists directly and push that out to the fan.
Great.
Yeah,
Daniel?
I think that, radio is always the place people turn in time of crisis. for a quick bite of news or a bite of weather or a bite of, you know, what exactly is going on. And I think for the most part, radio is doing a spectacular job.
You're not in your car as much.
But what radio has changed now into is you're listening in a different environment. And I think the Sirius Pandora combination has been very, very strong.
Yeah.
And they're putting together shows and stuff from Howard Stern to the real basic music stuff at every genre, from outlaw country to the spectrum to alt nation to hip hop. Everything is really hitting on all cylinders. And I've never seen this much more new music coming out of Sirius XM. So I applaud them for what they're doing.
They made it free also this month.
Yeah, it's free.
Yeah. And it's, I think till May 15th. So they've been doing really good stuff. I think iHeart got on the boards quickly when Elton John hosted that. That was a great effort to get on the boards and do things like that. I think what's really the negative of this moment, which we're not, really touching on, there's a lot of deals, there's a lot of creativity, but the authentic singer-songwriter, the authentic band is having a very hard time connecting with that natural trajectory of audience that they would have gotten from the club tour and the opening slot of one of three, or going into town after town after town and meeting with people, having a lunch, a conference room chat with anybody. It could be a digital provider, it could be a radio station. Half of the writers in the business have been furloughed. Writers meaning columnists and critics. They're out of work. Yeah. So we've lost a lot of the club and our community that way. So I'm very worried about releasing too much music by very, very great, authentic artists right now, the great singer-songwriters that cannot be in the clubs, that cannot be on the road. The Zoom call is fine. The Instagram Live is great, but WebEx, Google Hangout, we've been doing this with a bunch of radio stations, but a couple of them, the Kern in Minneapolis, the KEXPs, the stations in Austin are doing a very good job. KBCOs are doing a good job, but for the most part, very, very tough. And I am advising some of my artists, don't put out your biggest songs right now by those people, because you're going to be in trouble. You can't compete against a TikTok phenomenon or a novelty hit. And those are the ones that are really happening. There are 7 or 8 big hits right now. That's it. That's it.
To Daniel's point, there was this artist that I saw that is in direct contrast to what you're saying, which is ironic. His name was Mero, Mehro. And it's, to what Daniel said, I wasn't even going to mention it. I was, and then you said that. And he's just a singer-songwriter, but it's connecting. He just put it out a few weeks ago. The song is called Perfume, but the response, it's just a guy sitting there playing the guitar on a little stage. And it's pretty crazy because it's like volumes. It's like volumes of people commenting, and this makes me feel safe, and this makes me feel good. And it was kind of like, wow, because it's not TikTok. You would never see this song on TikTok, to your point, Daniel. It was just interesting because I think that every once in a while, an artist can break through in a way that's so unexpected and so completely the opposite of what's going on. Like literally, I haven't seen a song like this or heard a song like this from an artist like this. He's really young, but interesting that would have a reaction without having the TikTok backing or some kind of platform that's really, on time right now, or really vogue or really zeitgeist. And it's interesting that you said that because it's the first time I've seen that in a long, long time.
Josh had mentioned earlier and I wanted to bring up again, what kind of place TV and film, what place will they have in this new musical landscape? Because let's assume some films are into production before concerts can be back up and running, or TV shows. I mean, people are just at home absorbing and inhaling content on TV. Will that kind of change the face of the connection between music and, those TVs series? Will there be an even greater push to get people's songs on the TV, on the small screen, on the big screen?
Just because you mentioned my name.
Yeah.
I don't know. Obviously, without shows in production, there's going to be a decline in the amount of syncs that are happening, right? So, I don't know how much is in the can that will now come out over the next quarter or half a year. That is gonna hurt a lot of people. It's gonna hurt artists. It's gonna hurt record companies, publishers, and that needs to, as we open up as a society. Hopefully that'll change. But I can also look at it from a different vantage point, and there are new ways of making content, and I'm on calls and making deals with the Facebooks and the YouTubes and different ways of getting out content that artists are going to have to be creative about getting out. There's a different task at hand, and people are gathering in different ways, which creates new challenges. And we can't just not release music. Or some artists can. If you're a big enough artist, you probably have enough money, and you're able to survive the storm, and for a long enough period of time. Hey, if you're Kendrick Lamar, you're going to make a decision whenever you want to make a decision. And that's perfect for him, and other artists need to get content out, and that's just the nature. That's the nature of creation. Creating music, and we're every team has a different task, and they all don't need to operate the same. And so you kind of have to look at the particular artist and the type of music, and what's the strategy for the next 3 months, 6 months, and year, knowing that we're not sure what's going to happen. So you got to be smart, and you got to really think these things through. Marshall,
and look for
music. Like,
I think you're dead smack on, Josh, and I think that part of it is the artist has to start to look to be creative now in ways that they might not have been creative before, as it relates to the way that they release the content. And then, as I was saying before, some of the performance things that they may need to do may have to be done differently or performed in a different kind of way that maybe wasn't originally contemplated. And then, the hope is also that whether it's a brand, opportunity, or something where the content and the band and the artist and the brand can marry up, those things are now even more valuable than they were prior to this COVID virus circumstance, and can really help to boost awareness as well because of the lack of the touring side of things.
Yeah, and I think as a manager or an attorney, you're going to need to meet with people that have true vision and relationships. So I think you've got a very good panel here of people who have that, the connections and the relationships. But I think there's going to be a pruning of the trees and weeding out of people who just don't have the relationships and were never mentored properly. And that's another panel discussion of our business of not taking care of the next generation. But I think now, if you intelligently meet with Amazon and YouTube and Apple and Spotify and Deezer and iHeart and Cumulus and Sirius and Pandora, all these amazing outlets, and create that quality content, unique content, and bond with them early in careers, put a vision together, but you have to have the relationships. You have to sit and do it. We've seen execution of this, the biggest obviously being what Decca pulled off with YouTube over the weekend with Bocelli. That was unbelievable synergy with a legend, and it's good. But again, YouTube, amazing execution. Amazon has had unbelievable things with Song of the Days and some of the classic stuff, the cover songs that we're doing. We just did 2 things with Jade Bird with them. We're working with them with Taylor Jansen, another new artist. So you have to think of that stuff, and that's where you need really good management, a really good agent, and a really intelligent record company to shepherd you in and have those meetings, which are taking place. the good thing about the Google Hangout, WebEx, Zoom, we are having those meetings, but you're going to have to work much, much harder at having that substantial stuff. And that, I think, weeds out a lot of people who basically sign you and throw a Frisbee out there. So you really have to, the stickiness of it. And then when you get critically acclaimed artists, such as our Hamilton record, which came out Friday, which is getting crazy reviews all over the world, how do we make it all the way to the end of the year to the Grammys? We've got amazing management. We've got an artist that's making great content with his children and his wife.
Right.
And every day we're thinking of new things and creating content. The only way to do it. And I think if young Kendrick Lamar were coming up today, he would find a way to connect in his own very, very creative way and learn how to harness the power of a YouTube and an Amazon and an Apple and a Spotify in his own way. So I don't think that changes, but it weeds out the people who have no relationships. And you better have those home numbers and those relationships now in this time.
We've got about 10 minutes left. Sorry to cut you off. And I really wanted to find out from each of you. I'll start with Markell. What have you been tuning into? There's a lot of people that have been doing at-home concerts, from Rufus Wainwright. Even, you know, Springsteen was spinning records and talking about them on E Street Radio. We'll start with Markell. Have you been tuning into these impromptu at-home concerts or performances that you found inspiring?
Yeah, I definitely would say the first one that I tuned into was this DJ performance by DJ D Nice, which was pretty epic, really, because I was just getting all these text messages saying this person's in the chat room and whatnot. It was actually really cool to see that, how despite people's differences, everyone was really like chiming in from all sorts of backgrounds, and it was like a really good 6-hour Instagram live show. And the only one recently that I saw was James Blake, because he's my client and I'm just a fan of the music. So that was pretty special, hearing him cover songs like Radiohead and what have you. But for the most part, honestly, I've been quite busy that I've not had the time to even go in and like check in other things, because bizarrely, this moment has actually allowed me to have more clarity in my workflow. And I'm now speaking to my clients a lot more than I ever did. So it's been good. But yeah, not many live streams I've seen.
Anyone else?
I thought Premiere
also, that was great.
What?
The DJ one that Markell mentioned, I saw also.
Yeah,
D-Nice, that was amazing.
To me, Premiere versus RZA was genius. I thought that was great. I'm a good friend of Premiere, and I thought that was like the best. And I thought the other wasn't a session, but I thought what SNL did as a tribute to Hal Wilner, you know, made me cry. You know, a good friend, and thought that was beautiful. And using the use of Lou Reed's Perfect Day. But I thought the Premiere RZA was the winner for me so far.
Great. We have some questions from people that are watching. I'd love to throw a few out. This is for Ken. Somebody asked, do you think venues will remove seats and lower capacities to help with distancing?
I don't know about remove seats, but certainly there's going to need to be some kind of there are going to be distance regulations that are going to come from whether it's cities or states or CDC, and it will have impact on the way venues are set up. We've actually just started having conversations with promoters about that in the last week or two, and it's highly unclear what it will look like and how they will accomplish it. Can they skip rows in sales in theaters possibly, or every other seat or every 2-3 seats? There are ways that you can do it like that. But I do think when we start to come out of this and have mass gatherings and some sort of concert or sporting events, you're going to see some of that. Yeah, I do.
Here's a question for Markell. For songwriters looking to pitch songs, are labels asking songwriters for songs that are happy, sad, songs that speak to the isolation they might be feeling? Is there a particular mood that you're looking for in a song if it's being pitched?
Well, we actually had a phone call yesterday with the whole Republic A&R team. And what was really interesting about it is that I don't think it's changed as such, because the majority of artists, they just want to be authentic. So whatever it is, wherever they are creatively, is where we come in and we try to help service them in terms of telling a story. So not necessarily, it just all depends on the artist.
Cool. This is for Josh. This is an interesting question. I really like this. Are there any force majeure clauses or any other clauses being added to contracts right now? Clauses about when an artist needs to deliver an album, and is the money less on deals now? It's a two-part question for Josh.
Right. Well, force majeure is a real issue that that we're having to deal with, depending on the artist and the deal, and when the force majeure clause is trying to be enforced. Right. So we've had plenty of calls with agents about festivals and shows and touring deals where there may be a show that's in June, and the festival is trying to use force majeure in order to get out of the deal. We're not sure what's going to happen in June, or we're not going to apply it to September. We as a firm are seeing COVID clauses where we have these Zoom calls and debate how we should deal with them. Whether they're I think we saw it in a pub deal. Not from a major, but it was we were trying to figure out. There's so much activity in the publishing world. It's kind of a ridiculous ask to get some relief. So these things are happening, and they'll continue to happen. And again, it goes down to now everyone wants to lean on the agreement, so you better have good representation to make sure that the boilerplate. There's a reason why it's in there, and you can't always predict when it's going to come up. To the question about size of deals, the answer is record companies are still active and aggressive in trying to do deals. I know and have been overseeing deals that are extremely big and also modest. It all depends on who's the artist and what's their historical earnings, what's happening. Do they have leverage? I mean, I know of a $1 million deal at one of the Sony labels of a TikTok artist, and it's real, and there's income that there's pipeline income that a record company is going to be willing to put out, a good amount of money. Yes, the publishers and the record companies they're not throwing out money just because they're looking and trying to be smart, because if it was hard to break an artist pre-COVID, it's harder to break an artist during and post. So, everyone has to be reasonable, but there are going to be bidding wars. There are going to be people that do it better than the rest, which, to Daniel's point, you better have a smart manager. You better have a smart record company. You better have you obviously have to have a smart agent. And most importantly, you have to have a smart attorney.
Let me just ask you a question about that, Josh. With respect to the fact that the touring piece is shut down, indefinitely, does that change the deal if and when the label was trying to incorporate touring, but noting that they're not going to have touring for X amount of months, in the overall way that the deal is negotiated now?
So, I'm actually dealing with that exact issue with a new artist in the team. And, one of the arguments that we can try and make is, you guys don't even deserve a piece of the 360. Nothing's happening for the next year. And it depends on the team. It depends on how healthy the business is, right? If you can make money releasing your own content, you don't need a record company to keep you alive. You may not need to do that deal if it's not exactly right for you. But there's a lot of artists out there that, they don't have another source of income, and they're going to do a deal. And, there's a frenzy in this kind of short term that says, all right, let's acquire as much content as I can. Let me sign as many acts as I can, and I'll figure it out later because I might be able to get them cheaper.
Right.
So, it's different for different people and different acts and different managers that know how to build businesses with or without, partners. So it's a very dynamic time.
This is a question for Markell and Daniel. We'll start with Markell. One Republic wrote a song called Better Days in March, and it's already synced in a car commercial. So Markell, are you advertising artists that you work with to do things such as this?
I encourage my artists to, well, first of all, I'm here to support my artist's vision. So if I think this is tying into their ultimate vision, then yes, I would support it. However, if this seems to me like an opportunistic money grab, then as part of my duty, I would strongly urge them to reconsider if this is not in line with their ultimate goals and vision. So yeah, I'm not in the no business, but I'm not equally trying to get people to do things that are not in alignment with who they are.
How about Daniel?
Definitely not. I would support their charity aspect. Marcus Mumford did something about the Grenfell Towers and about War Child, about children who are, have horrible conditions around the world, that are victims of war, and the COVID virus is spreading in those camps as bad as it is in nursing homes. So we support that. A member of Two Door Cinema Club is doing something for a charity. But I'm not going to tell someone to write a song for this period. If you want to write about your isolation, you want to write about your love, an affair you had, please do it. But yeah. I would never do that. Never.
We have a few minutes left, 2 minutes. And my last question is, why don't we just start with you, Daniel? What album would you recommend right now? Old, new? What are you listening to? What album is kind of getting you through?
So upon the passing of John Prine and Bill Withers, they went into heavy rotation in our house. I would say those two have been, very, very important in our house. I think the songs about the road have been important. Simon and Garfunkel has been coming up a lot. We keep listening to Annie Tomorrow. We have a little baby. We have a baby here. We have a baby Roses here. So Annie Tomorrow comes up a lot. The sun will come out tomorrow. That probably is our theme song in our house right now. I think that's the one. And when I want to hear perfection, I watch old Phoenix concerts. Amazing. That's what I do.
Yeah. Antonina, what are you listening to?
What am I listening to? In a weird way, I've been putting, it sounds crazy, but I've been listening to a lot of classical music. There's something about it that there's so much space, and it just sort of makes you feel like you're not judging it, it just sort of embodies you, and it lets you feel a little bit more spiritual.
Yes.
And it connects you to a lot of sources that you wouldn't, and it sort of resets your brain a little bit. So I have that on a lot. So I've been doing that mostly.
Yeah, it's really soothing too. Josh, how about you? What are you listening to?
I have 4 kids, so we're definitely in that, TikTok, we're top 50 global on Spotify. So it's not as highbrow as the rest of you. But it's the Drakes and the Roddy Riches and the Marshmellos and there's a record, Pofu, or I don't even know, that's a massive record. We're actually my 4-year-old is watching Disney right now because the streaming service is like heaven for her. So Sound of Music and music is being played a lot in the house, so we're lucky to have it.
Great. Ken, how about you? What are you listening to?
Well, first of all, I've got a couple of artists who are releasing music right now, so I obviously wanted to hear that stuff. Haley Williams, Gavin Rosdale, and Bush right this minute. But really what gets me through it is I've gone back and listened to the band that got me into the music business to begin with, which is Rush. And that's what I need to listen to try and navigate through this, just for me.
Cool. Markell?
Well, I'm in confinement by myself. So the record that I always go to in moments like these is Every Kingdom by Ben Howard. It's a very special record to me. So, I mean, that's always been on repeat for me.
I think we're out of time, Ari.
Well, before we move on, what record are you listening to, Malina?
Oh,
Yeah.
me? Oh, okay, cool. Gosh, I've been listening to a lot of James Taylor. I've been listening to a lot of Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. I've been listening to a lot of Rufus Wainwright, Want One. And I've also been listening to a lot of Simon and Garfunkel too.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
One artist coming out with a cool song is Chelsea Effect. They're coming out. And for me, it goes back to my comfort music, which for me is 90s hip hop. And so I've been going back and listening to a lot of 90s hip hop, which, picking up what Daniel talked about, that RZA versus Premier Instagram battle, which had 1 million viewers or people tune in, I thought was amazing. And I'm hoping they get Premier and Dre to maybe do something like that, because we haven't heard from Dre yet, and I think he needs to make his appearance in the streaming thing. Anyhow, this is an amazing discussion. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Malina, for moderating a great panel. Once again, Creative Community for Peace, we are a nonprofit organization. So please, we rely on donations. So if you would like to donate, please visit ccfpeace.com. There it is on the screen. And you can donate. Also, so you guys know, we have an amazing panel discussion coming up on Tuesday. It's with the cast members from Fauda, who just released their new season today, and that is going to be a great panel discussion. And then we're going to have a couple more of these. We're thinking of one about Broadway, maybe one about the TV and sync world for film and TV. So that's going to be great. Anyhow, thank you guys so much, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thanks for doing it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know.
Guys,
This is my walk-off music.
We should have had some walk-off music.
Perfect. Have a nice day, guys. See you later.